Change their vote. On this vote, the yeas are 234, the nays are 193. The bill is passed, and without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. The unfinished business is a question on suspending the rules and passing H.R. 2767, which the clerk will report by title.
H.R. 2767, a bill to designate the facility of the United States Postal Service located at 8 West Silver Street in Westfield, Massachusetts, as the William T. Trant Post Office Building.
Question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill? So many as in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. For what purpose does the gentleman from Minnesota rise?
Speaker asks for a recorded vote.
Gentleman requests a recorded vote. Those in support of the request will rise. Sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
The House passes the payroll tax cut package by a vote of 234 to 193. Again, it's a bill that extends the Social Security payroll tax cut. It provides some unemployment assistance and prevents scheduled cuts to Medicare payments to doctors. A final vote 234 to 193. This is likely the last recorded vote of the day in the U.S. House. They will move on from here and debate a number of suspension bills. The House is back tomorrow at 10 a.m. for morning hour speeches, legislative business at noon, and it's likely tomorrow the House will take up the defense authorization bill. Meanwhile, in the Senate, debate continues there on 2 resolutions proposing a balanced budget amendment, and votes likely in the Senate tomorrow morning, followed the Senate on C-SPAN 2. They are in this evening. On C-SPAN 3 tomorrow, 10 o'clock Eastern, we'll bring you a House oversight hearing looking into the operation of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, with all 5 commissioners testifying, including the chairman, Gregory Yaxko. That's tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern on C-SPAN 3.
votes are 420, the nays are 0, 2/3 being in the affirmative. The rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Utah rise?
Mr. Speaker, I send to the desk a privilege report from the Committee on Rules for filing under the rule.
The clerk will report the title.
Report to accompany House Resolution 493, resolution providing for consideration of the conference report to accompany the bill H.R. 1540, to authorize appropriations for fiscal year 2012 for military activities of the Department of Defense, for military construction, and for defense activities of the Department of Energy, to prescribe military personnel strengths for such fiscal year and for other purposes, and providing for proceedings during the period from December 16, 2011 through January 16, 2012.
Referred to the House calendar and ordered printed. For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to have my name removed as a co-sponsor of H.R. 3521.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you.
Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the Chair will postpone further proceedings today on motions to suspend the rules on which a recorded vote or the yeas and nays are ordered, or on which the vote incurs objection under Clause 6 of Rule 20. Record votes on postponed questions will be taken later. For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition?
He calls it up. We just have to. The majority calls it up. We're okay.
Okay, he just looked at.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 3421.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 3421, a bill to award congressional gold medals in honor of the men and women who perished as a result of the terrorist attacks on the United States on September 11, 2001.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Fitzpatrick, and the gentleman from New York, Mr. Meeks, each will control 20 minutes. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and to add extraneous material on this bill.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to submit an exchange of letters with the Ways and Means Committee regarding this bill, and I yield 3 minutes to the author and sponsor of this bill, the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Schuster.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. I thank the Speaker. I rise today in support of the Fallen Heroes of 9/11 Act, which I introduced earlier this year, in honor of the 10th anniversary of September 11th. I represent Shanksville, Pennsylvania, the area where Flight 93 went down, and more importantly, where the first counterattack on the War on Terror occurred. It has been an honor for me to work closely with the families of Flight 93 over the years on key initiatives, including funding the Flight 93 Memorial, National Memorial, and awarding the 9/11 heroes a Congressional Gold Medal. The Fallen Heroes of 9/11 Act would award 1 collective Congressional Gold Medal to honor the heroes that perished on 9/11. To be displayed at each memorial site, the Flight 93 National Memorial in Pennsylvania, the National September 11th Memorial and Museum in New York, and the Pentagon Memorial. The tragic deaths at the World Trade Center, at the Pentagon, and in rural Pennsylvania on September 11, 2001 have forever changed our nation. The officers, emergency workers, and other employees of state and local government agencies, including the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, and of the United States government and others who responded to the attacks on the World Trade Center in New York City and perished as a result of the tragic events of September 11, 2001, took heroic and noble action on that day. The officers, emergency workers, employees of local and United States government agencies who responded to the attack on Pentagon in Washington took heroic and noble action to evacuate the premises and prevent further casualties of the Pentagon employees. And the passengers of crew of United Airlines Flight 93, recognizing the imminent danger that the aircraft that they were boarded posed to a large number of innocent men and women and children, American institutions and the symbols of American democracy took heroic and noble action to ensure that that aircraft could not be used as a weapon. Given the unprecedented nature of the attacks against the United States of America and the need to properly demonstrate the support of the country for those who lost their lives to terrorism, it is fitting that their sacrifice be recognized with the award of an appropriate medal. Awarding this medal would give Congress and the American people an opportunity to pay further tribute and honor to the heroic men and women that lost their lives that day. There would be no better gift this holiday season to those lost loved ones than passing this bill and officially recognizing those that lost their lives that fateful day. Mr. Speaker, I urge all my colleagues to support this bill, the Heroes of 9/11, and I want to thank over 300 members, 350 members, I believe it was, that signed on to this bill to make it possible that we're here today going to pass this and hopefully sending it to the President. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This year represented the 10th year where our country was attacked by terrorists and forever changed our nation. The events that took place on September the 11th, 2001 will be forever embedded into every American soul. I, being a New Yorker, on that day can recall with vivid memory that I was in the city because it was an election day in New York, a beautiful day in New York, and being pulled to the television by some individuals that our nation was under attack. I could then look out from the venue where I was and literally see the two towers. Then getting on the phone to talk to individuals, many and some of whom was racing to the scene of the tragedy. Not racing from it, our first responders racing to it because they wanted to help their fellow human beings. These indeed, and we use the word hero sometimes as a matter of course. But if you want to talk about a heroic act, when and in the time of crises, individuals willing to put their own lives on the line to help a fellow human being, I tell you, the first responders, the officers, the emergency workers, and others, indeed, are true American heroes. When you think about what took place, what must have taken place on that fateful day, for the passengers and the crew of the United Airlines Flight 93, think about what they must have gone through, knowing that there had been planes already attacking our nation. But yet, they made a decision to sacrifice their lives and to make sure that the plane would go down so that no other lives would be destroyed. The true meaning of a hero. Think about the government employees. Think both local and the United States government who responded to the attack on the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., who took courageous steps to protect fellow Americans, heroes. And that's why on this 10th anniversary, H.R. 3421, where we would have 3 coins to commemorate those heroes, those sheroes of the day that the United States of America was attacked by terrorists, is a way that we can come together to say we shall never forget and we shall honor those individuals who left their families because of a vicious act, but also in attempting to save many other American lives. And so, Mr. Speaker, I say that I thank all of the 328 co-sponsors who united together to say to those heroes, we shall never forget you. We shall never stop thanking you. We will always, always hold your name up high. And these coins are the commemoratives of those acts so that yet children yet unborn will know of your heroic acts. And they shall never, ever perish from the minds of an American citizen, whether they're here today or whether they will be born tomorrow. And I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today also in support of H.R. 3421, the Fallen Heroes Act of 9/11, introduced November 14th by the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Schuster. Remarkably, in the short 4 weeks since its introduction, it has obtained almost 330 co-sponsors from this House of Representatives. The bill before us recognizes the heroism of the men and women who died on September 11, 2001. That day, just over a decade ago, that changed this country and, in fact, changed this world and changed it forever. At 3 sites, seemingly unconnected on that clear, bright morning, thousands of brave men and women died in the most agonizing ways and before our eyes. Each of them was a hero, and this bill awards a Congressional Gold Medal in their memory. There will be 3 designs, one each for the attack sites in New York City and at the Pentagon and in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And the medals struck for those sites will be displayed at the museums there that preserve the memories of that frightful day. After the award of the medals, bronze copies of the medals will be available for purchase at a nominal price. Each design, which should be reviewed by the Citizens Coinage Advisory Committee and the Commission on Fine Arts, is to capture the horror of that day and the majesty of those heroic deaths. This medal will be the second and final Congressional Gold Medal to be approved during this session of the 112th Congress. Mr. Speaker, I urge immediate passage of this bill and reserve the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York rise?
I yield the gentlelady from the great state of New York, Carolyn Maloney.
The gentlelady is recognized.
I rise in strong support of H.R. 3421, the Fallen Heroes of 9/11 Act. After 9/11, I have never seen this body so united and determined. And this same determination and united spirit is behind the bill that we will be passing today, with well over 300 co-sponsors. This year marked the 10th anniversary of that tragic day, where we had innocent Americans murdered on our soil, invaded, the first act of terrorism that we are confronting and combating today in this Congress. The bill will symbolize in the gold coin the 9/11 site in New York, the site at the Pentagon, the heroic flight over Pennsylvania, and will have the gold coin put on display in the museums in these 3 locations. On 9/11, we lost thousands and thousands of Americans, innocent Americans who did what we did today, went up and went to work and were murdered because they were Americans. It was outrageous. We will never forget. This is another way that we can memorialize the heroic actions, the heroes and heroines that worked hard to try to protect them, and really recognize how outrageous it was that an American citizen was murdered just for being an American. Since 9/11, thousands and thousands more have lost their health, and I thank this body for acting in the last Congress to provide health care and compensation and monitoring those who risk their lives to save the lives of others. No other act has changed this country as much as 9/11. We totally reorganized our priorities, created a Homeland Security Department, totally reorganized our intelligence gathering, and implemented 43 of the 53 recommendations of the 9/11 Commission. It was this Congress at its best. The 9/11 Commission report, which was a bipartisan product, came forward with concrete recommendations. Their report sold more copies than Harry Potter. It was an important report, and this Congress took that report and enacted those recommendations into law. With that same bipartisan spirit, we should be attacking the economic challenges that we confront today. I compliment my colleagues on both sides of the aisle for sponsoring and working on this legislation. It will mean a great deal to the men and women that I have the honor of representing, to have a bronze coin that they can purchase to remember, to have their input into the artistic framing of the message for these three tragedies in our country. It is thoughtful, it is purposeful, and it is historic. So I thank my colleagues. I ask of permission to revise and extend, and I yield back the balance of my time. Thank you.
Without objection, so ordered. For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise?
I reserve. We're ready to close.
Ready to close. No further speakers.
Gentleman from New York.
Mr. Speaker, being a New Yorker, and I still to this day, as I walk the streets of downtown Manhattan, cannot believe that those two twin towers, the Twin Towers, are not there. I taught my daughters how to navigate the streets of New York, looking up at those towers as some look up to see the North Star. I will never really, in my heart, conceive of the towers not being there, even as we build this great memorial. But when I think about the families, how they must feel if I just utilize them as a tool for my daughters and they're gone, but when you think about the families whose loved ones are gone, we have to do everything in our power that they know that we will always be thinking of the ones that are not able to have dinner with them this evening. These coins, when tourists come to visit the various sites, or when individuals want to purchase them for the commemorative event, so that they can always remember these heroes, is, I would say, a symbol of the United States House of Representatives and Congress, that in these kinds of times we do come together and we will work together in a bipartisan manner to salute Americans and others, because some lost their lives who were not American citizens, that we shall never forget. And we thank them for their courage, we thank them for their heroisms, and we thank them for the sacrifice, the families, for the sacrifices that they have as a result of not having those loved ones. And I yield back the balance of my time. And let me also thank my colleagues and Mr. Schuster for introducing this bill and working collectively together in a spirit of being Americans. And I thank my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. I yield back the balance.
The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I represent Bucks County, Pennsylvania, which is the home of a 9/11 memorial for Pennsylvanians, for Americans, for all of those killed on September 11, 2001. It is also the home of Ellen Saraceni, widow of Captain Victor Saraceni, who was the pilot of United Flight 175, which was crashed into the South Tower at approximately 9:03 that morning. He went to work along with 2,973 other men and women lost on September 11th, never imagining that they would not be returning home. For Ellen Saraceni and for the other 17 families from Bucks County who lost a loved family member on that day, I want to thank my friend and colleague from Pennsylvania, Mr. Schuster, for offering this bill. I was proud to help him introduce it, and I humbly ask my colleagues to support it. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 3421? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the Chair, two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The bill is passed.
Mr. Speaker.
Without objection, is laid on the table. Gentleman from New York.
Yes. A member may preserve the option to have. I ask for a roll call vote. Under the point of order that a quorum is not present.
Someone ask for the ayes and nays.
Yes, I object. I object to the vote on the ground that a quorum is not present.
Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. Well, I was waiting for him to rise. For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 886 as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 886, a bill to require the Secretary of the Treasury to mint coins in commemoration of the 225th anniversary of the establishment of the nation's first federal law enforcement agency, the United States Marshals Service.
Excuse me, gentleman will suspend. Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Jones, and the gentleman from New York, Mr. Meeks, each will control 20 minutes. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and to add extraneous material on this bill.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to submit an exchange of letters with the Ways and Means Committee regarding this bill, and I would like at this time to yield to the gentleman from Arkansas, who is the sponsor of the bill, Mr. Womack, and as much time as he might consume.
Without objection, so ordered. From Arkansas is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Speaker, in 2005, 16 cities competed for the right to become the home of the U.S. Marshals Museum. The city in my district, Fort Smith, was one of the 2 finalists and was ultimately chosen for many reasons, one of which was its strong historical connection to the U.S. Marshal Service. Fort Smith was for many years the seat of justice not only for the Western District of Arkansas, but Indian Territory as well. More marshals and deputies have been killed in the line of duty out of the Western District of Arkansas than any other district in the country. Most were killed riding out under famed Judge Isaac C. Parker, immortalized by the novel True Grit and the movies by the same name. A few months ago, Mr. Speaker, I introduced legislation to mint a coin to commemorate the 225th anniversary of the U.S. Marshal Service. Today, I'm pleased to be standing here with the opportunity to urge my fellow members, many of whom are co-sponsors of this bill, to join me in honoring a truly deserving institution. The proceeds from the sale of these coins will assist in the preservation and maintenance of artifacts and documents which will be displayed in the U.S. Marshals Museum. Additional proceeds will go to the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association, the National Law Enforcement Museum, and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. The museum, which will overlook the beautiful Arkansas River, will consist of 20,000 square feet of exhibit space to highlight pivotal moments in the history of the U.S. Marshals Service, such as the Going Snake Massacre of April 15, 1872, which left 1 deputy and 7 posse men dead in the bloodiest day in Marshals history. This event will be the central exhibit of this museum. A Hall of Honor for fallen marshals will also be part of the more than $50 million facility paying tribute to those killed in the line of duty, from Robert Forsyth in 1794 to Deputy Marshals Derek Hotzenpiller and John Perry in 2011. In addition to serving as a symbol and constant reminder of the character and tradition of one of America's greatest institutions, this commemorative coin will allow the U.S. Marshals Museum to honor past marshals like Bass Reeves, who in 1875 was commissioned as one of the first African-American deputy marshals west of the Mississippi River. Reeves was a skilled gunslinger who on one occasion brought in 19 horse thieves to the federal jail in Fort Smith all by himself. But as the nation's oldest law enforcement agency, Bass Reeves is only one of many characters etched into the storied history of the U.S. Marshal Service, including the famous 3 guardsmen of the Oklahoma Territory, Wild Bill Hickok, the Earp brothers, Virgil, Morgan, and briefly Wyatt, along with Doc Holliday during the shootout at the OK Corral. Today, that same grit and courage defines the Marshal Service. U.S. Marshals were in Oxford, Mississippi to protect James Meredith when he became the first African American to attend the University of Mississippi. U.S. Marshals were in the state of Washington when convicted Soviet spy Christopher Boyce was captured when he escaped from prison. And U.S. Marshals were in Oklahoma and New York to administer justice following the terrorist attacks that took the lives of innocent Americans. Since 1789, the U.S. Marshal Service has served this country with dedication and distinction, upholding its creed of justice, integrity, and service. And today, U.S. Marshals continue to play an integral role in the security of our country. They assist when tragedy strikes. They ensure the safety and well-being of federal officials. And they track down and apprehend some of the most dangerous fugitives, murderers, sex offenders, and gang members with little regard for their own safety. Mr. Speaker, the U.S. Marshal Service has meant so much to so many. Over the course of history, more than 250 marshals have given that ultimate sacrifice. They have selflessly given their own lives to protect our way of life. This coin will serve as a token of our appreciation and a symbol of their sacrifice. Mr. Speaker, there are a lot of people to thank, including the 300-plus co-sponsors of this legislation, who with their co-sponsorship made consideration of this bill possible. I want to thank Chairman Backus for his support in moving this bill forward through committee. I want to thank my friend Mike Ross of the 4th District of Arkansas for his personal involvement in seeking co-sponsors for this legislation and his unfailing support for the construction of this museum. I want to thank Ed Pastor. Ed took this legislation to the Hispanic caucus and got widespread support there. Thanks also to the late Ray Baker, the mayor of Fort Smith, who was in the early beginnings of the development of this museum project, and current mayor Sandy Sanders. I want to thank the CEO of the Marshals Museum organization, Jim Dunn, and Jim Johnson, and very soon they will be conducting nationwide campaigns to see that the funding is possible to construct this museum. Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to have sponsored this legislation. I also want to thank my friend John Bozeman, my predecessor, who began this process in a previous Congress, and I know will work very hard in the Senate to champion this legislation through the other body. But I'm proud to have been the sponsor, but more than anything, I'm proud of what the U.S. Marshal Service means to our country. And I am anxiously looking forward to the construction of this museum so that we can showcase the museum, the institution of the Marshal Service, and the great city of Fort Smith and the 3rd District of Arkansas to all who will come and see. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back my time.
Gentleman from New York is recognized.
I yield myself some time, as much time as I may consume. Mr. Speaker, I am proud to support H.R. 886, the United States Marshals Service's 225th Anniversary Commemorative Coin Act. This bill honors our nation's oldest federal law enforcement agency, and requires the Secretary of the Treasury to mint 3 different coins to celebrate the Marshals' 225th anniversary. The first President of the United States of America, George Washington, had the privilege of nominating the first 13 Marshals, who were then confirmed by the Senate. Since those days of the early Republic, the Marshals have continued their brave service to the nation. Among the duties the Marshals have undertaken include combating counterfeiting from 1789 to 1865, when the Secret Service was established, conducting the national census from 1790 to 1870, and confiscating property used by the Confederacy during the Civil War. Today, there is a U.S. Marshal in each of the 94 federal districts protecting the legal system. As a former prosecutor, I can attest to the importance that Marshals play in our judicial system. U.S. Marshals, among their other duties, protect the federal judiciary, allowing our country to maintain a system of fairness and integrity. They also protect witnesses and jurors, enabling citizens to engage in a high duty of serving their communities. The U.S. Marshals have so many great accomplishments, but one that's of special consideration for me as a young child, one of the greatest accomplishments that I can recall, is during their service during the Civil Rights era, when the rule of law was under threat in the South, when riots broke out over the enrollment of James Meredith, a young African-American student at Ole Miss. It was the U.S. Marshal Service that protected him with a 24-hour detail for an entire year. One cannot underestimate the role they played in helping desegregate the South and promoting our great nation to the point where we are today, to where even, in fact, the 44th President of the United States of America is an African American. So I am pleased to pay tribute to the Marshal Service by supporting this act, and I urge my colleagues to do the same, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time is reserved. For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina rise?
Mr. Speaker, I don't have any further speakers at this time, so I will reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from New York is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield for as much time as he may consume. The gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Ross.
Gentleman from Arkansas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of H.R. 886, the United States Marshals Service 225th Anniversary Commemorative Coin Act. I'm proud to be an original co-sponsor of this bill and to work very closely with my colleague from Arkansas, Mr. Womack, to issue a commemorative coin honoring the 225th anniversary of the United States Marshals Service and helping to raise money for the U.S. Marshals Museum in Fort Smith, Arkansas. The very first Congress, with its very first bill, created the U.S. Marshals Service when President George Washington signed the Judiciary Act of 1789. This was the same bill that created the entire federal judicial system, and today the U.S. Marshals Service remains the nation's oldest federal law enforcement agency. My home state of Arkansas has a proud chapter in the history of the U.S. Marshals Service. As a young state, Arkansas sat on the western edge of a growing nation in the late 1800s. It would be the U.S. Marshals and their deputies based out of Fort Smith, Arkansas, that had jurisdiction over 74,000 square miles, an area where countless number of dangerous criminals fled into Indian territory to escape prosecution. Home to Judge Parker's courthouse, Fort Smith became the center of law and order in the western United States throughout much of the late 19th century. Charles Portis's 1968 novel, True Grit, first introduced Fort Smith, Arkansas to many Americans and its role in the history of the U.S. Marshals Service. An Arkansan, born and raised in El Dorado, Arkansas, in my congressional district, Charles Portis later saw his novel turned into a 1969 movie starring Arkansas native and recording artist singer Glenn Campbell and John Wayne as U.S. Marshal Rooster Cogburn. More recently, the 2010 remake of the movie featuring Jeff Bridges in the same role. The importance of Fort Smith, Arkansas to the U.S. Marshals Service is in part why the city will also be home to the U.S. Marshals Museum, to be funded partly by sales from the U.S. Marshals commemorative coin. When finished, the U.S. Marshals Museum will be a world-class national museum with over 20,000 square feet, helping to share the history and legacy of the U.S. Marshals Service. Most importantly, it will serve as a memorial for all those within the U.S. Marshals Service who gave their lives in service to our country. Today, more than 4,000 U.S. Marshals, deputy marshals, and criminal investigators make up the modern U.S. Marshals Service, carrying out many of the duties first assigned to them more than 2 centuries ago. Our U.S. Marshals and deputy marshals protect the federal judicial system, apprehend federal fugitives, seize property, house and transport federal prisoners, and operate the witness security program. They continue to risk their lives to preserve and protect law and order, the very basic tenet of our American democracy and, yes, our way of life. Mr. Speaker, this bill, which will not add a single dime to the deficit, will allow our nation to recognize, honor, and thank the sacrifices that so many U.S. Marshals and deputy marshals have made to this country over the past 225 years. It will also generate revenue from the 225th anniversary of the U.S. Marshals Service commemorative coin sales to help build a museum in their honor in Fort Smith, Arkansas, so that this generation and the generations that follow will know the truly American story of the U.S. Marshals Service. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to join my colleague from Arkansas, Mr. Womack, in offering up a bipartisan bill. And I'm asking you to join me in voting for H.R. 886, the United States Marshals Service 225th Anniversary Commemorative Coin Act. And again, I'd like to thank the gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Womack, for his steadfast leadership and hard work to see this day become a reality. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time. Thank you.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina
I
rise?
will reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we close, it is important for us to remember the history of our great country. And by celebrating the 225th anniversary of the United States Marshals Service, that's exactly what we're doing. And by creating this museum for the preservation and the maintenance and the display of artifacts and documents is important. And the money, the first $5 million in surcharge proceeds will do just that. But the money that's additionally raised, and again, it will be utilized for great purposes. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children will be beneficiaries. And the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association Foundation will be beneficiaries. And the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund will be beneficiaries. And they would have to raise matching funds for coins that are sold. These coins are for sale. And so we will be able to commemorate the Marshals, the United States Marshals, and the service that they've rendered to this country. And in addition thereto, be able to support 3 much-needed organizations for individuals who really need the support in those 3 organizations. So I ask all of my colleagues to join us on H.R. 886, the United States Marshals Service's 225th Anniversary Commemorative Coin Act, and vote aye. And I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina rise?
Mr. Speaker, at this time I have no other speakers, and I will yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 886 as amended? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, two-thirds being in the affirmative, the bill is passed.
Mr. Speaker,
the gentleman from New York.
I object to the vote on the grounds that a quorum is not present, and I make the point of order that a quorum is not present.
Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. Well, I'll wait till he's looking at me. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 313, the Drug Trafficking Safe Harbor Elimination Act of 2011, as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar Number 222, H.R. 313, a bill to amend the Controlled Substances Act to clarify that persons who enter into a conspiracy within the United States to possess or traffic illegal controlled substances outside the United States or engage in conduct within the United States to aid or abet drug trafficking outside the United States may be criminally prosecuted in the United States and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Smith, and the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Scott, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members will have 5 legislative days within which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous materials on H.R. 313 as amended currently under consideration.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, H.R. 313, the Drug Trafficking Safe Harbor Elimination Act of 2011, introduced by the gentleman from California, Mr. Schiff, and me, closes a loophole in federal law. Drug traffickers are currently exempt from prosecution in the United States when they conspire to traffic drugs outside of the United States. This bill clarifies Congress's intent that the drug trafficking conspiracy statute should be given extraterritorial application. A federal criminal case demonstrates how the loophole is being exploited. In 1998, 2 individuals conspired with members of a large Colombian drug trafficking organization and a Saudi Arabian prince. The goal of the conspiracy was to traffic 2,000 kilograms of cocaine worth over $100 million from South America to Europe. Several meetings among the co-conspirators occurred in Miami, Florida, and elsewhere around the world. Specifically, while in Miami, they planned in detail to purchase the cocaine in Colombia and ship it to Europe for distribution. The prince used his royal jet under the cover of diplomatic immunity to transport the cocaine from Venezuela to Paris, France. Although part of the cocaine was seized by law enforcement authorities in France and Spain, about 1,000 kilograms of cocaine were distributed and sold in the Netherlands, Italy, and elsewhere in Europe. In 2005, 2 of the conspirators were convicted of drug trafficking and conspiracy in federal district court in Florida, and each was sentenced to over 20 years in prison. However, in 2007, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit vacated their convictions. The court reasoned that there is no violation of federal law when, absent congressional intent, the object of the conspiracy is to possess and distribute controlled substances outside of the United States. This is true even though meetings and negotiations to further the crime occurred on U.S. soil. Crime is usually a territorial issue specific to the place where the crime occurs. However, drug trafficking is inherently global in nature, now more than ever. In fact, 2 other provisions of the Controlled Substances Act are already explicitly extraterritorial. They relate to narco-terrorism, terrorism financed through drug trafficking, and the foreign manufacture of drugs for importation into the United States. The primary anti-money laundering statute used in drug trafficking cases is also extraterritorial. 3 years ago, Congress enacted the Federal Maritime Drug Law Enforcement Act in response to the increase in use of vessels to traffic drugs around the world. Congress gave this law express extraterritorial effect. Congress stated, quote, that trafficking in controlled substances aboard vessels is a serious international problem and is universally condemned. Moreover, such trafficking presents a specific threat to the security and societal well-being of the United States, end quote. The United States is a signatory to 2 major international drug control treaties. Of the 194 countries in the world today, 184 are parties to the 1961 Convention on Narcotic Drugs that acts as the foundation for most of the world's drug trafficking laws. Drug trafficking is a global problem, universally condemned by law-abiding nations. Some argue that a person should not be subject to the new conspiracy offense created by this bill unless their conduct is expressly illegal in every country where the drug trafficking occurs. Such a requirement is rarely, if ever, imposed on extraterritorial statutes. In fact, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are proponents of a number of extraterritorial laws that contain no requirement that the conduct be illegal in the country where it occurs. Such crimes include genocide, the recruitment or use of child soldiers, or the use of semi-submersible submarines. These laws are significantly broader than the bill before us today because they do not require any illegal conduct to occur inside the United States. H.R. 313, however, does require that the conspiracy to traffic drugs take place here in the U.S. This legislation is narrowly tailored to reach drug trafficking conspiracies that occur on U.S. soil but promote the global distribution of drugs. To require the government to prove that the crime violated foreign law would also render this law essentially ineffective. Drugs are not simply manufactured in one country and sold in another. Drug shipments make several stops along the way to their final destination. For instance, cocaine is manufactured and processed in Colombia. It will likely be shipped by ground to Venezuela. It may then be put in a shipping container, transit several Caribbean islands, and then sent to Africa or Europe. It could be offloaded in Spain, divided up into smaller but substantial shipments, and wind up in a dozen different European countries. The proceeds from this multi-million-dollar shipment will make their way through the banking systems of a dozen other countries before being delivered to Colombia. The government should not be required to prove that each of these acts violated each country's laws to prove that the traffickers plotted their conspiracy inside the U.S. This bill, as amended in the Judiciary Committee with unanimous bipartisan support, excludes conspiracies to possess drugs. This legislation aims to eliminate the safe harbor for drug traffickers and distributors whose primary motive is financial gain. If we do not pass this bill, we continue to invite drug traffickers to plan their schemes within our borders. The United States should not provide a safe haven for the world's drug traffickers to plot their international drug trafficking operations. This common-sense bill prevents drug traffickers from benefiting from their legal exemption from prosecution. and it tells drug traffickers not to plot their illegal activities in the U.S., and if they do, they will be brought to justice. I urge my colleagues to support this bill and I reserve the balance of my time. And before I do that, I do want to thank Mr. Schiff again for sponsoring this legislation with me, and I'll reserve the balance of my time.